Góðan daginn allir, velkomin á þennan föstudagsfyrirlestur í Azure User grúpunni. Við erum með hann Frigg Bergson sem er Microsoft MVP ásamt Esther sem er líka Microsoft MVP og þeir eru bæði í Azure og EVD og þeir ætla að fara aðeins yfir eitthvað með í Bicep og svo náttúrulega er mjög gott að koma með spurningar. Þannig að ég bara segi ekki svo vel. So Esther and Rick, thank you very much for being here with us in Azure User Group in Iceland. It's wonderful to have you guys. So I'll just give you the torch, and how would you like to have the questions? I have a few questions that just in the end, or?
You can interrupt me, but I'm not sure Freek is also happy to do that. I usually interrupt Freek.
Yeah, I'm used to it. Okay. No, it's fine. Whenever you see questions that feel like need to be answered along the way, I'm happy to do that. But we'll save some time in the end as well. That's no problem.
Okay. So I'll just give you the torch and you can go.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the invite. It's always great to be back for the Iceland Azure community group. And I'm actually happy that we're switching to English because my Icelandic is not that good. I'm not sure how about you, Esther?
It's terrible, to be honest. But I loved the sound of it. So yeah, it was good to be introduced in Icelandic.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So in the next hour or so, we'll be talking about two different things, right? So first of all, we'll take a look at some practical ways to help you improve your Bicep deployments towards Azure. So we'll take a look at 10 things we selected to live demo on the Bicep language innovations. And then the next part, we'll take a look at how to further optimize the coding experience by using Copilot, MCPs, custom prompts, and a whole lot of other cool things as well. So packed session, and as mentioned, happy to take any questions along the way as well. So a quick round of introductions. I'll just start. So my name is Frigg Bergson. I'm based in the Netherlands. I work as a product manager at Parallels, focusing on virtual application and desktop delivery. Nothing I will be talking about today, because the other thing I enjoy working with is infrastructure as code. Took the deep dive into Bicep since the 0.1 version. Super excited about that technology. Never went back. Wrote a book about it. And also Microsoft MVP, as mentioned, on AVD and Azure. And just a fun fact about me is that I like to play and collect board games. So as a family, we have a collection of over 200 plus games. We stopped counting afterwards, but just something that we enjoy doing in spare time. So with me today, again, is Esther. It's always a pleasure to present together. So you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently mostly focused on Windows 365 deployments, but I still love to play around with Azure Virtual Desktop and the Bicep deployments. So yeah, I think Cloud DevOps Engineer still is a valid title to uphold. And like Freek, I'm also a Microsoft MVP, and I figured I should also counter his fun fact and not just state that I do collect board games, but have very limited people to play with. So I'm more a solo board gamer. But my other hobbies are definitely trying to prepare different dishes on the Kamado barbecue, and to relax after busy days, I was almost going to say mindlessly build some Lego sets that are collecting some dust in the attic. So that's me in a, well, not almost nutshell, but that's more details about me.
Yeah, great. So let's get started. So
yes.
As a first, really quick introduction, hopefully everyone is aware of the Bicep language, but just to sort of set the stage, we're talking about infrastructure as code, right? So it's all about taking a Bicep template, declaring the resources you want to create in Azure, feeding that into the ARM engine. Along the way, it will be transpiled into a JSON template and through the concept of resource providers that will lead into various different resources, whether that's compute, storage, networking, or our Azure Virtual Desktop demos you'll see in a second as well, or Kubernetes. That doesn't really matter. That's the concept of infrastructure as code with Bicep. Hopefully you are all aware. Three important aspects about the Bicep language. Obviously, this is declarative, meaning that you basically state the end result of what you want to create rather than having imperative code like PowerShell, like Azure CLI, where each line of code is processed individually and in a very specific order as well. With Bicep, you don't care about the ordering at all. You care about the end result. And it's also idempotent, meaning you can take the same Bicep template, deploy it into the same scope, and the result will always be the same. So there's idempotency there. And it's also fast. So you basically throw your Bicep file into the ARM engine, and if resources depend on each other, automatic depends on sections will be created. And if not, resources will be created in parallel to speed up that deployment as well. And Bicep has existed for 5 years plus now. So it's crazy to think that it already has been 5 years. I just want to quickly highlight the Bicep community call as well, because recently, end of May, they did the 5th birthday edition, which was a lot of fun to watch and attend. So the QR code and a link here, I will make sure to share the deck as well. And highly recommend you to rewatch that community call. And in the end of the deck, we also have a sign-up page to sign up for that monthly call that they do. It's a great way to keep up to date with some latest innovations, to provide feedback or see some early development of future features as well. So it's been 5 years, right? So just as a quick, overview of what they announced 5 years ago as part of their original slide deck of Bicep 0.1, which is 5 goals and 5 non-goals as well, or as the title implies, ungoals. I'll talk about what that is in just a second. But they basically said the 5 goals we'll have is we're going to reduce the current pain. And by current pain, they obviously mean the complexity of JSON templates with the coding complexity and the code overhead and things like that. As a result, we're going to ease the adoption, but we also want to make sure that we're compatible with existing templates. So ARM and ARM templates are not going to go away, but it's going to be an abstraction layer on top, which allows you to mask away all of the code complexity while still having all of the benefits of the platform. And lastly, modularity, right? So it's all about reusable elements. It's all about abstracting piece of code, put them into separate module files to really help and drive reusability across the board. And if you take a look at the 5 goals, it's interesting to see that they still apply today. And then for non-goals, what they said is we're not going to create one language that rules them all, right? We don't want this to be the general purpose language that meets every resource or every scenario or every use case or every environment. We also do not want to invent any new technology as well. And so again, if you take a look at the non-goals, it's great to see that those still apply even after 5 years today. So just a quick reference to the non-goals, where is that coming from? In the beginning, I mentioned I like to play and collect board games, and there's actually a really crazy card game out there, which is called Flux. If you're not familiar, I can definitely recommend it. But it's a crazy game in the sense that the goals of the game actually change while you are playing it, which is really interesting and really challenging to play. But luckily, the Bicep team did not change their goals or ungoals or non-goals for that matter, even across the 5 years that the language has existed. So that's great to see. So that's all 5 years ago. We're now going to fast forward to today and talk about part 1, which is all about those language innovations. And it's all going to be live demo. So we'll take a look at these 10 things that we selected to help you improve the authoring experience inside VS Code. So let me switch to that and let's dive in. So before taking a look at the 10 features, this is always something that I love to demo, which is the Bicep visualizer, right? So as you are growing your Bicep templates and you're adding more resources and more modules, at some point you want to have like this visualization of all of the resources you are going to create. To have a good overview and also have an interactive diagram you can just drag around and place into anything that you want to help you improve the authoring experience of larger environments like this. So
Blake,
yeah.
I think you need to double check if you're sharing the right screen, because I'm still seeing the slide with all the demo options.
Good. Let me check. Window. I might have been sharing the window instead of the screen. That's not good.
Yeah,
love
perfect. Now we're having the visualizer. Awesome.
So now it probably makes more sense, right? So we're now
Yes.
looking at the visualizer. I won't repeat what I just said, but you get the idea, right? This is a great way to visualize your code and start working with larger environments. Thank you, Esther, for pointing that out.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Your lovely assistant.
Yeah. All right. So let's take a look at the 10 things on the left-hand side that help you, even further optimize these larger deployments that looks like this. And the first thing I want to dive into is something new, which is called Bicep snapshots. So how does that work? Let's assume that I have, in this case, a super simple Bicep example with only just a couple of parameters and 3 different resources we are going to create. And the first thing I'll probably do is deploy this into Azure. Obviously, there are many ways to do it, but in this case, I decided to do an AZ group deployment towards a resource group and provided this template. And then afterwards, what I can now do is I can take a snapshot of that deployment by using the Bicep snapshot commandlet. So let me just go ahead and run that to see the end result. It's probably going to warn me a couple of times because I'm actually using preview technology, which is still into experimental phase. But it's always fun to live demo that, right? Here are a couple of warnings. But the end result that you can see on the left-hand side is that we now have a snapshot file, which contains all of the settings that the Bicep parameter file plus the Bicep file contained. So that's great. So now let's fast forward in time, and we're now going to make a change inside this environment. For example, we're going to change a couple of parameters inside this Bicep param file. So let's say that I'm going to change this to false. And let's also update this friendly name here and save that. Now, in this environment, we can probably estimate, right, what is going to happen because these are just a couple of resources. Because we probably understand that if we change these resources, we'll probably know exactly which properties of which resources are going to change. But think about that large environment with all of the modules and submodules and sub-resources. At some point, you have no idea if I'm going to change this parameter, which resource, which loop, or which conditional deployment, or which module is going to change as a result of that. And that's what snapshots is all about. So let me go ahead and actually take that snapshot right here. Validate snapshot right here, obviously. So now we're going to validate the changes that we made against the snapshot that we created before, which now provides this great overview. And obviously, again, these are just a simple example with only one resource that has actually changed, but it does provide me with, this is the property that changed, this is the old and the new value, this is another property, and this is also another old and new value. So a great way to validate, if I make this change, what is going to happen. And if I'm happy with that change, obviously I can just redeploy the Bicep file like this. So I'm just deploying now the Bicep file that I updated with the updated parameter file into Azure to deploy the change that I wanted to make. That takes a couple of seconds to complete, obviously. Not sure if you want to wait for that. It's now running. But the other thing that you now do is also update the snapshot. So what we've now have done is we have made sure that this change is going to result into this change in the end. We have redeployed the Bicep file, and using this mode override, we can now rerun the creation of that snapshot to make sure that the snapshot is compliant again against the combination of the Bicep and the Bicep param file. So this will essentially update the JSON file of the snapshot that we have on the left-hand side.
So this is an even better way than just the what if option that you have with your Bicep, because this allows you to really log within your CI/CD pipelines what the actual changes were at that time the pipeline was run. And then with the new run, you can actually check what the changes will be, instead of just having a what if scenario that only states what what changes it will make within Azure.
Yep. No, definitely. As you mentioned,
Nice.
The output obviously comes very close to the what if commandlet, but the fact that you now have this snapshot file that you can also store, and as you mentioned later on, use in all kinds of deployments, that's a great way to have that. And it comes a little bit close to what you might be familiar with as state files inside Terraform,
Yep.
right? But just then for a very specific Bicep file in combination with a param file. So it's It's a great feature, currently in preview, but definitely can encourage you to take a look at that. And then feature number 2 is resource-derived types. So how does that work? So you might be familiar that if you have a Bicep file, you can create parameters, right? So I can do the keyword param followed by a name, and then these are all of the resource types that are available by default, right? So arrays, Boolean, integers, objects, strings, etc. But sometimes that might not be enough. Sometimes you might want to take a look at an existing property of an existing resource and simply say, I want to have that parameter of exactly that type. And that is what resource-derived types do. So what you do is you use the same parameter declaration here, but now you point to resource input, and then pointing all the way to a resource type, including the API version, and then say it's going to be properties.hostpool type. So now what I created is a new parameter of type hostpool type, if that makes sense. And even if I hover over it, we can see that I also get this feedback on the allowed values of this type. So I've now created a new parameter, which is based on an existing property of an existing resource. And obviously, when I want to start using it, in this case, it's going to be a resource declaration for the host pool type. I can just now pass it this parameter and make use of the properties of that resource, which already exists. So it's a great way to leverage what is already out there. No, I won't save this. So that's resource-derived types. And if you want to go even further, there's also the concept of user-defined types and user-defined functions. So how does that work? Let's do types first. So we mentioned, right, existing types like string, integer, Boolean, or pointing to other properties of other resources to get those types as well. The other way is creating your own types, and this is how that works. So I'm using the keyword type followed by a name, and then declaring anything that I want to have inside this type. So in this case, I'm saying it's a combination of 4 different strings. It's going to be a host pool, an app group type, a custom RDP property, a load balancing type, but it could be anything, right? So now that I have declared this type, I can now use it inside the declaration of a parameter. So I'm now creating a new parameter. In this case, it's called host pool properties. It is of type my host pool type, which is obviously the type that I just declared before. And I can now pass it some values in there as well. What I can then do inside the creation of the resource is I can easily point to it. So I'm using, in this case, I'm creating a host pool here, and for the properties, I'm specifying it that entire set of my host pool properties, which is just the type definition that I created for the specific use case. So providing a lot of flexibility when it comes to creating your own types. And there's an interesting thing about these type definitions, which is relatively new as well. So I have another short example here of another object that I'm creating and then a parameter why I'm using it. But as you can see, I made a typo inside this property here. It says optional. So the P is obviously intentionally left out here. But you get this warning, right, saying, did you mean optional property by any chance? And of course I did. But as you can see, it's a yellow squiggly right here. So it does still allow me to use this template to compile it and to deploy it. If I do not want this to take place, I can use the new decorator here, which is called sealed, because I now seal this type. And as a result, as you can see, it now became an error. So the message is still the same, but it's an error. And as a result, I cannot compile and start using this. So that's the sealed decorator that you can now use in combination with user-defined types. Same thing applies to user-defined functions as well. So you might be familiar with existing functions you can do in ARM templates and Bicep, like what is the minimum value of these numbers? Does this name contain this specific character, and all kinds of other functions as well. But you can also create your own by using the keyword func, providing a name, and then optionally setting a couple of parameters you want to pass to it. And then specify your own custom function. So in this case, it's a custom function that builds a remote desktop property object. So it adds a couple of strings in the right order. But of course, the function could be anything that you need. So that's a great way to add some additional customizations and doing things outside of the Bicep language that require functions to do. The other great thing you might be aware of is the export decorator, right? So in this case, I'm saying this function is also allowed to be exported towards other Bicep files. And as a result, if I would open up another Bicep file like this, I could do things like, for example, import everything and call it my AVD functions coming from this specific Bicep file. And then within the resource declaration, I could just point to my AVD functions dot the name of the function and pass it a couple of variables. So again, we mentioned reusability as a big aspect in the beginning. This is definitely a big part of it. So user-defined functions and types.
It looks like it kind of allows you to separate your functions in a separate file, have people update that and do version control of it, and then use it within your other Bicep files. Almost like PowerShell modules, so to speak.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and you can do the same thing with user-defined types as well. I didn't mention that, but obviously if you create a type here, I can also export to other Bicep files. And again, reusability is a really big aspect of the Bicep language. Yeah. So number 4 is failing and also trying to recover from failures. So let's take a look at a quick example here. Let's say that I want to use a Key Vault module. In this case, we're using an Azure Verified module. So that's a module that's managed and maintained by Microsoft. But let's say that within our company, we decided that whenever we deploy a Key Vault, whenever we do that inside the location needs to be as a prefix inside the Key Vault name. So in this case, the name that I defined here is not code compliant to our own coding standards, and it should fail. So let's actually go ahead and see if it does. So I'm using the deployment pane here to quickly do a validate of the template. In case you're not familiar with this is one of the big benefits of the VS Code extension as well, allowing you to do things like validate the what if that Esther mentioned earlier as well, or even direct deployments right from within the VS Code console. So within a couple of seconds, it should fail, and that is what we're seeing here. So we're now seeing this customized error towards the administrator, not only saying that it failed, but also some of the reasons why. And this is the way you do it. So you create a new variable with a name, and this is the failure condition, where you basically say if the condition is East US and the Key Vault name does not start with East US dash, we need to fail because not compliant against our coding standards. So let's go ahead and actually change that to see what happens. So I'm going to add East US dash to the name and do a quick validation again and see what happens. So Esther, do you want to take a guess? It's going to fail or succeed?
Succeed?
Succeed. We'll see.
She said very hopefully.
Takes a couple of seconds to complete. I don't want to be a spoiler, but it's actually going to fail again. And that is expected. And the reason is that there's another fail detection right here. So that's important to know that if you have multiple fail detections inside the Bicep template, if it fails upon the first one it comes across, it will stop checking the rest, right? So this is another error that we need to fix because of our coding standards that we defined. So a great way to provide admins with a very great summary of what is going wrong in case you want to do very specific checks against your own, in this case, coding standards. So
yeah, but it allows to incorporate some business logic where you basically say from our business perspective, these settings need to have that specific value. So I like that.
I agree. Yep. So number 5, we're halfway there. It's a very quick feature. It's called the hidden title tag. The reason we're showing this that not everyone is actually aware of this. You might be aware of the fact that you can do tags, right? For example, I'm adding a tag production here and a tag owner here as well. But I also added this hidden title tag, which is kind of descriptive the way it sounds. But let me switch to the Azure portal and actually show you. So I have the resource right here. And if I open up the resource, this is what you'll see. So you have this descriptive name, which is probably due to our coding standards and compliancy. But I can now also add this additional name to it as well, which is more user-friendly, which actually tells us what it is without having to change the name of the resource. So that's a great way to use that hidden title tag to provide additional information like that. It's a great little feature in the Bicep language. Then the deployer function. So this is a very common scenario, especially if you take a look at Azure Key Vaults again. So you might be familiar that if you are deploying a Key Vault and you are an owner of the subscription, you obviously become an owner of that Key Vault, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're also able to add secrets and add passwords to it, because those are separate role authorizations. What you can now do is you can use the deployer function to, at runtime, detect who is deploying it and automatically add that as a authorization towards the Key Vault as well. And the way that you do it is quite easy. You use the function deployer and then simply .object ID, which now provides this variable principal object ID with the object ID of who is deploying it. So if I am deploying it, my object ID ends up in here. If Esther deploys it, her and the object ID ends up in here, or maybe a service principal or something else that you're using. And then obviously within the declaration here, so if I'm adding some permissions and authorizations, I can then use that principal object ID within the same Bicep template to immediately add myself all of the permissions to be able to add keys and certificate as well. And the same thing you can do for user principal names. So whenever you want to define or find out who is deploying it, not just the object ID, you can also add this line right here to, at runtime, receive the user principal name of who is deploying it and use that across your Bicep template as well. So a great function, again, is the deployer function. Number 7 is optional module names. Again, a quick one, but definitely helpful. So let's take a look at a very small example here. I have 2 different modules. I have a module that deploys an application group. I have a module that deploys a host pool. And I have this main file here where I actually use the modules. So previously, what you had to do with modules is it was mandatory to always define a name like this, which in most cases is convenient because you can explicitly add a human-friendly name. But in some scenarios, you might not want to do it. And I'll explain in just a second why that is. But the new way is just leaving that out like this. So do not specify a name. So this is not the name of the resource we're deploying. This is the name of the nested deployment where these resources are, as part of the resources are being deployed. Let's take a look at the Azure portal to see the difference there real quick. So if I go to the optional module names, these are the 2 resources that we deployed. But if we take a look at the deployment history, we can see this view right here. So this is the explicit name that we defined by defining the name of that nested deployment. And these are the ones where I did not define a name. So you can see now is that what they did is they took the resource name and added this unique string to it. The reason is that now, if I want to do a redeployment, I will actually still have access to the previous deployment name as a result, the previous status and output as well. Whereas for this resource, if I would redeploy this with the same deployment name, I will lose all of the history of that other deployment. So this is a great way, although that's a quite a cryptic name that was added to it. It's a great way to have that history as part of your deployments if you're doing multiple deployments in a resource group, which in a lot of cases you might do. So that is what this optional module name is essentially all about. Then secure decorators for outputs. You might be familiar with secure decorators for parameters. So for example, if I add a new parameter here, let's just call it test, and it's going to be a string. What you can add here is the secure decorator, which means that this parameter does not end up in any log files or portal histories or deployment histories and things like that. What you can now do is use that same technology. For example, if I have an output here, and simply also add that as an output on this one as well, which is a great way to make sure that if I deploy it, the value is still available for the main template where this module is used, but the value, in this case, the host pool registration token, is never shared in any log file, portal, or deployment history as well. So that's the secure decorator for outputs. Number 9, we're almost there, is user-defined constraints. So how does that work? Let's say that I have a module here created this module to, in this case, create a host pool and accepting a couple of just sample parameters, as you can see. And the first one is a session limit 1, which, as you can see, uses this decorator here to make sure that the value is never higher than 10, which is great. A great way to provide some restrictions on it as well. But the max value and min value and other decorators that you have by default sometimes are not enough, which is great because we now have the validate decorator, which allows you to use Lambda languages like this. So in this case, we're saying that the max session limit 2 must always be an even number, which is totally crazy for a session limit for a session host pool, but just as an example of what you can do with functions. But you can also use other parameters inside your validation statement. So for example, in this case, we're saying that it always needs to be the same value as maximum session limit 1. So another example where you can use parameters even inside the validation statement. So you might be wondering, where is this checked and how how does it feel if it doesn't comply to these validations? If you start using this module, for example, inside your main template file, we're using the keyword module and then passing a couple of parameters, we can see that we're getting an error here because 11 obviously is higher than 10. So we expected that, but there are no squigglies here for these two values. That's the reason. The reason is that this functionality is still into preview, right? So, but this is the place where you will eventually expect those errors as well, if they're not compliant to the validation statement that you did. So as soon as you start to use the module, this is where you will expect those errors to occur. And then the last one, and then we'll switch to the second part of the session. This one is a quick one as well, only if not exists. So the name sort of gives away what it is. You might be familiar with conditional deployments, right? So let's say that I create a parameter here, which is a Boolean. I set it to false. And if I declare a resource, I could say if condition is true, which means that this resource will only be deployed if this condition is true. That's called a conditional deployment. That is great, but let's go back to the larger deployment we had in the beginning with all of the modules and submodules and super large environment. Sometimes you might want to take that deployment and only deploy a subset of it. And that's what you do with this new decorator right here. So if I do only if exists, it will simply skip the creation of this resource if it already exists, which is a great way to take, as I mentioned, a large deployment and only deploy a subset of it by just skipping resources if they already exist. So that was feature number 10. And yeah, hopefully that was interesting to see. I'm not sure if there are any questions we want to do now or want to switch to the next section.
We can do questions if there are some questions right now. I'm still trying to process all the demos that you showed, Freek. So.
Yeah.
My mind instantly goes to, oh, this is cool for this feature, and I can do that in this pipeline. And so, yeah, I'm almost dashing off instantly to implement this. Thanks.
That's great. Sure.
I'll ask questions in the end. It's much data to congest. So
yeah, sure.
Okay.
No
then I'll start sharing my screen.
Yes.
And then let me double check.
So we're going to switch to the second part, right? So this is all about the Bicep language. Let's now further empower ourselves.
Yes, I hope everyone can see the screen. Double checking with Freek. Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Before I start talking about all the fun stuff. So I did realize way before we did these or prepared for this presentation that I'm very fortunate to have like a direct call to Freek in case I have any questions in regards to Bicep or the new features. But I also realized that not everyone has that luxury to have Freek on speed dial. So how can we make sure that if you are a beginner and you have limited time, because nowadays you really have to perform very fast within companies, how can you get up to speed with Bicep and all the Bicep functionalities and make sure that you incorporate them in your solutions. Of course, everyone is already talking about Copilot. So yes, I figured I also needed to spend some time to explore the GitHub Copilot functionality. So this part will focus a bit more on how can you get the most out of your Visual Studio Code experience and use the different opportunities that are out there. For instance, if we are looking at Windows 365 to also get to dab into the Microsoft Graph extensibility options that you have within Bicep. So at the beginning, we said that one of the non-goals was not to have one language to rule them all, but the Bicep team does realize that it's very helpful to be able to have one deployment mechanism, or like Terraform allows you to not just deploy on Azure. They were exploring ways to also use Bicep to not just deploy in Azure, but to also check with the Graph engine, allowing you to deploy resources within Microsoft 365. And in this case, it's mostly focused on Entra and Entra IDs for users and groups. But what they did is they created, and I also need to, I think it still says extension in here. I used to call it a provider, but nowadays it's called an extension for Microsoft Graph, which allows you to define that at the beginning of your code. And then what it basically does is it uses your Azure Resource Manager to redirect your Graph deployments to the Graph engine, and then get the results back from running that Graph engine. So the first part that you need to do is, well, or at least that is to make your life easier, is to use your Bicep configuration JSON file, add a section for the extensions, which allows you to have like a short name or an alias that you can define, so you can easily also switch between, for instance, the version 1 for the Graph engine or the beta functionality that is available within Graph. As you can see, you're not just using your registry. This is still referring to the Microsoft Bicep registry. And you can also define specific versions of that Graph engine that you want to use. Next, you can, as I mentioned, reference that extension within your Bicep file and then use it to create actual resources. What you see within the second marked block is that you actually can specify a resource. In this case, it's an Entra group, and then referencing your alias for your extension as was configured in your Bicep configuration JSON file. I hope that makes sense. At least for me, from my point of view, it helps me a lot, especially with Azure Virtual Desktop, where you also need to specify that user logon permissions for your session host, for instance. So that's why I also wanted to make sure that you were aware of this capability, because that gives you even more control within your Bicep files and not just have to rely on additional PowerShell configurations for that. The cool part is, because we're using it within Bicep files, you can also use references for existing group names. So it does allow you to use all those specific Bicep language capabilities. So in this case, I can specify that I do not want to create a new Entra group for this functionality. I want to use the existing Entra group, and then I have to link to it through the unique name property. And then I figured I might as well also share with you some of my experiences within GitHub Copilot, and I hope it's not a tough battle to get access to a GitHub Copilot license within your company. But for me, I'm very fortunate to have that capability within VS Code. And one of the things that I wanted to make you aware of is that there's this super cool agent mode available now within GitHub Copilot that allows you to really have like a sparring partner for you, or like a peer review of the code that you're creating. At least you now not only have your coworkers to ask for a review, but you can also use GitHub Copilot in that agent mode to help you build some awesome code. And I'm not going to instantly go for vibe coding, though I love the terminology. I still think that it does help if you have some already experience in coding and some more advanced knowledge of all the code syntaxing, etc. Because what you now can do, as I mentioned, you can within GitHub Copilot select agent mode, and that allows you to even include multiple tool sets that are available for your GitHub Copilot agent. In my case, I clicked on the tools selection option within GitHub Copilot, and then have a list of different extensions that can be installed through the extension options within VS Code, or even specific MCP servers that I installed as an MCP server within VS Code. So what you see is that I have a selection of different extensions and MCP servers that have additional information or additional knowledge on Bicep and the Bicep syntax and architecture. So in this demo, I specifically selected multiple of those resources and tried to experiment and see if there are like really differences. So I wanted to make you aware of the fact that we have a GitHub Copilot for Azure, which also includes like references to Azure resources, and especially also what I love from a Bicep perspective is the Azure MCP server that you can also install as an extension within VS Code, because the Azure MCP server has a specific Azure Bicep schema tools included in it that gives you actual direct access to all the Bicep schemas that are available. So that ensures that any code that is created or generated by the agent is checked against the Bicep schema. So I thought that was pretty cool. And you can also, of course, ask it questions. For instance, I just used the prompt to instantly ask it what are the 5 latest API versions, because I usually struggle if the Bicep extension doesn't use the IntelliSense, or I have Copilot I was going to say compete with the IntelliSense on what the best answer is. At least now I have another way to quickly ask some Bicep schema specific questions to Copilot. One of the other cool things, and I don't think everyone is aware of it, because this basically is still in an experimental stage, is that if you install the Bicep extension, it now also installs an MCP server client specifically for Bicep. So that allows you to also ask like similar questions in regards to what are the latest API versions within my schema, but it also allows you to actually prompt it to create your Bicep files for you based on the specifics that you add in the prompt file. So as mentioned, it's still in an experimental stage, but and this still basically lists the 3 functions or tools that were included in the first MCP server. But if you're a regular attendee of the Bicep community calls, hopefully you remember the call that we had, I think it was August of this year, or maybe even still September, where I think it was September, where they announced that they also have the AVM metadata now included in their MCP server, which allows you to get all that AVM recommendations or the best practices modules that are a part of the Azure verified modules repository or registry to be included or used by your agent. And that results in the fact that now you're not just getting modules created to your local module files, but it can now also just instantly refer to the Azure verified modules registry.
And I think it also preferences those AVMs, right? When it tries to come up with a solution, it will check the AVM first. Is that still the case, or?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure because what you can see if I here have the references that it uses, but what they showed is that it actually goes through the list of Azure verified modules to check if it has those verified modules in there in the registry. So yeah, it does reference it directly within the code that it's generating.
That's great. Yeah.
Yep. Another one that I think is always helpful is the Microsoft documentation that links to Microsoft Learn. That MCP server, obviously, I used the same prompt with all the different options that were available within VS Code to just check if responses can variate very much, and hopefully you'll see if you check the deck that we're sharing later on, you'll see that the differences are like marginal. So that gives me good confidence in the results that it's producing. So at least it's not contradicting between different MCP servers that you can create. As mentioned, it's the Microsoft Learn MCP server, basically, and you can easily, through the website, even install it directly in VS Code. And then there's another awesome movement basically within GitHub Copilot, is that it also allows you to create what they call custom prompts. There's a great awesome -Copilot repository within GitHub or provided by GitHub itself that allows you to see different examples of different chat modes that you can have, or instructions, or even custom prompts. And I really want to encourage you to check out that repository because it has one of the favorites custom prompts that or chat modes that I like, which is called Beast Mode. And it's not just the name that attracted me, but it is the fact that it has this huge instruction in it that basically says, well, you're an agent, you have to really think about or add a lot of reasoning to the solutions that you're looking for, or the answers that you want to give on the prompt. I want you to always keep me informed on the process or the task list that you're going through. And I also want you to double check and verify through the internet if your answers are like valid, or basically it's trying to prevent it from hallucination. Another thing is what they call instructions, and that zooms in on, and I don't think I have it. Oh, yes, that zooms in. For instance, it has an apply to tag. That zooms in on specific files or language files that you create. In this case, it's the one for Bicep that I just took from the repository and implemented it by adding it to my workspace. And that, so I have a bicep.instructions.md file, and this specifically says you always need to declare your parameters at the top of the file and use the description decorator that Freek already showed in the demos. I want you to use the latest stable API version. And so it already gives you a lot of logics that you want your agent to follow when it is creating a Bicep file. So that's, at least for me, very powerful. And then I figured I can talk a lot about all the options that you have, but I can also show you the power that it has in action, hopefully. So as you can see, I selected different MCP servers. I changed it to my favorite chat mode, which is that beast mode in this case. And I gave it a custom prompt, which is hopefully contains enough information to make sure that it, in my case, mimics kind of Freek's experience and knowledge of Bicep by asking it to create a full AVD deployment in Bicep files. And as mentioned, the beast mode keeps me up to date in the progress that it's making. So it's repeating basically the prompt to let me know that it understands what I'm asking it to do. In this case, it's gonna check with the internet and Microsoft Learn for different references that it wants, that it needs to build the AVD Bicep files or the AVD deployment Bicep files that I'm asking it. You can see it's checking a lot of resources, and then it already starts to mention to me all the different steps that it's going to perform, like create your main Bicep file, create one for a host pool, and it keeps you up to date. And this is me trying to frantically keep track of what it's doing and the differences that it's making. But it's actually, for instance, what you can see is that it's not just creating the file based on the information that it gets from the MCP servers and the internet references that it checked, but it's also including the linter functionality for those files and checking the errors that are produced by the linter activities. So it's also trying to instantly validate the files and the code that it created, and then try to find solutions for the errors that it's still seeing. So that's why you see the file names switching between red and green colors, because that's the linter functionality, and my agent going frantically trying to fix all the errors that it's seeing. One of the other things that I realized is, my prompt wasn't basically having all the things that I wanted. So this is me, well, kind of more like in a conversation with the agent and saying, oh, I totally forgot to ask you, but can you also create like a README file? So I can help, I can make sure that any colleague of mine that wants to understand what I created also has that README file to understand how to use this Bicep deployment. I simply prompted the agent, and what you see is, for instance, the references that it's using. It said Bicep best practices. I think that one is from the MCP server, and it created a README file that has all the instructions in it. Then I figured, oh, this is pretty cool. So probably everything that created can be easily deployed. I asked it to also include a deployment script for it. So let me just simply do a what if with that deployment, and we're good to go, I hopefully thought. But as you can see, there are still some errors that I need to fix. So one of the other things that I decided to do was to just ask the agent, can you please fix the errors that I'm still getting? And then I was very hopeful that all the deployment scripts would be instantly fixed. And then what you see very easily, well, I have to admit that I kind of helped it a little bit, I think, because now I'm getting that annoying option where you have to specify all the different parameter input for your PowerShell script. And then I ran into some more errors. So trying to create the right prompt. And I think I kind of got in a debate on what a correct parameter file is. So I had to double check. As you can see, parameter file still empty. And then I think I kind of got it to hallucinate, to be honest. So let me double check. Yeah, so I'll skip to the end because of course we want to have like a successful story. What basically happened is that the parameter file got it included double parameters, so I had to fix that manually. Trying to. There's some controls in the way. Okay, basically, so what happened is. This is just me having a lot of explanation to it, but what happened in the end, I'll make sure that I'll get you the full video as well, Gisli. So we definitely, well, at least I enjoyed watching the video and the conversation I had. So maybe that's educational for everyone else. But after manually fixing some of the parameters, I did manage to run a successful what-if deployment. So what you can see is that it is creating 6 resources, and that kind of made me realize that Freek probably had a much more complex deployment with having included FS logics and the Azure monitoring in a correct way. Because I think my agent is still thinking about all the different advanced deployments that I wanted in there. It still has some empty like mockup files, so it's not perfect yet. And that basically leaves me to just the conclusion that I had based on my experience that I wanted to share. And thank you, Freek, for coming up with this awesome explanation. So this also kind of reflects my feeling about the terminology vibe coding, where you basically say, oh, I've had like a vibe coding session with my Copilot agent, and you want to see this result because it's awesome. So I'll just leave it with this and saying that my personal conclusion is that I am very fortunate to have Freek on speed dial, and I definitely do not want to change that right now and replace him with an agent that is still struggling to understand what I'm asking, as well as I am struggling to ask it the right questions.
The question is, though, are you sure that I'm not an agent?
Well, the fact that you love board games might have given it away. Yes,
okay.
I think you're still a human in the loop.
Yeah. It was great to see, though, that within the video that you showed, right, when we can actually follow all of the ideas and the thoughts and the steps that the API. It's very, not only very entertaining, as you said, but also you learn a lot on, debugging code and what steps to take and what next to approach. It's really great to see.
Yeah, and that's I think that's one of the benefits of that beast mode that I incorporated, and you can see once again you can see that in the awesome Copilot repository. But yeah, it was amazing, and and like you said, I learned so much from its thought process of the thought process that the agent shared with me. Also about, oh, I didn't ask that explicitly in my prompt. Now I understand why I need to ask it more questions or give it more context of what I am actually expecting it to deliver. So yeah, I think it's a whole new era to explore together, like a learning journey, working with an agent and not against it.
So before I ask any questions, are there any questions from the attendees? If not, then I'll ask this. So the first thing that I wanted to know, because vibe coding is getting really, good now, especially with the new cursor, which is also kind of a vibe coding tool, where it can actually, run terminal. It can use MCP both in Azure, and it just does everything for one. Even the plan mode, so it's basically plan steps before it creates the code, so you can look over how it's going to be. How do you think the future will be based on this? Because what I'm thinking of, should I learn Bicep from ground up, or should I wait, or we're in a kind of a crossroads now, I think.
Yes. So my experience is that the agent still needs a lot of like human context. I think as a human, there is so much in my thought process or my own unconscious reasoning. And I'm not going to say like gut feeling, but all those elements, those cannot yet be mimicked by an agent. So even with vibe coding, I think the agent can produce some really good like base code, but you still need some experience of or be able to actually read the code, like understand the Bicep concepts like Freek also demoed. To pinpoint where you need to troubleshoot your code and improve it, or to understand the right prompt that you need to create to have that agent improve the code itself. So I'm still confident that my knowledge and experience in coding helps me to be like a team with the agent, and to definitely use its knowledge and the fact that it can way more faster than me do the Google searches, so to speak, and understand what it's or be able to understand the result that it's getting and translate that into the context that I want. But I think from a troubleshooting perspective or a root cause analysis, I still need to also help that agent get the context perfectly for my specific situation.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes the output of these AI engines that can be very convincing. If you take a look at it, you think, oh yeah, this actually looks right, and then you do some further investigation yourself, and you find out that half of the answer was just completely made up, right? That is using functions that do not exist yet, or a function that the AI wished it had, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously that is improvement. What I do see a lot of value is helping you, as Tom also mentioned, as a co-programmer, right? So if you're using it, you're creating your own Bicep templates and you're stuck, you're not sure how to continue. It's a great way to just give it your code and say, look, I'm stuck here. What is the best option to take forward? But yeah, obviously it's improving a lot. But yeah, as we mentioned here, keeping the human in the loop, I think that's definitely the conclusion, or at least for now.
Yeah, I think also if I put my 5 cents on this, is that even if you don't know how to code, you have to know how Azure works, because it can actually destroy your environment.
Yes.
So it's something that one has to be really careful about. The second question that I had, you mentioned the snapshots, Frigg. I'm a little bit confused on, is that some kind of state management like in Terraform, or how does it create a file somewhere, or how does it, is it an ARM file? How does it work in regarding the state?
Yeah, it comes close to what we know as the state in Terraform, but I think it's, in my opinion, it's a little bit more of a safer solution where the state file in Terraform is very critical, right? If you lose it, if it gets corrupted, you're not in a happy place. But with Bicep, what you can do is you when you create a snapshot, you actually point it to a Bicep parameter file. And because that Bicep parameter file is linked to the actual Bicep file, it takes the state of those two files, right? So it doesn't take a look at Azure. It takes the state of the Bicep file plus the param file. And the resultant of that, it stores that into a separate snapshot file, which is in a JSON format. But that's not, of course, not meant for anyone to actually go into and read and themselves. It's just as a machine state, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then whenever you do a validation, you can you can make a change, for example, in the Bicep param file that I showed. You point it and have it do a validation. And then what it checks is, it doesn't check Azure, right? But it checks the snapshot file that you have against the new and updated Bicep or Bicep param file to give you an overview of what is going to change if you are making this change inside production. So it's a little bit of a mix, I think, between what if does and what a state file does. But in this case, if you lose the snapshot file itself, nothing gets lost, right? Except that you do not have the history anymore of what you previously deployed. That's
could you recreate it like in Terraform? If you lose the state file, you can actually recreate the state file. It's a quite tedious process, but it can be done. Is it possible to recreate the state file based on current environment?
Yeah, not on current environment, because the snapshot is always taken from the Bicep file and the Bicep param file. So if you still have the original Bicep and Bicep param file, you could of course recreate the snapshot.
Yeah.
But if you had overwritten the Bicep param file with something else, and you did not preserve the previous version of that, obviously the snapshot itself is also lost. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's much more like logging the exact moment or the snapshot of that state, but it's not using Azure for references. So it's just using the Bicep files or the input that you provide for your deployment. So I think that makes it more powerful than the Terraform state file, because as you said, if you want to recreate that state file, it has to go to Azure and check the current state of Azure and put that into a Terraform state file. With the Bicep snapshot, you only need to have those original Bicep files. So if, for instance, in your CI/CD pipeline, you make sure that you have that original, this is my Bicep template files or my module files that I used in this deployment, and you have also that parameter file stored for a logging mechanism, basically like in a pipeline artifact, and have that state file there, you have everything, or the snapshot file as Bicep calls it. You have everything to recreate the exact deployment without ever having to go to Azure and check, because that's basically what the what if also does, is it checks what will my deployment change within Azure. So that's why it's different functionality.
Yeah, exactly. So my third and final question is, I don't know if you can answer this, but you might be able to have some insights on it. Microsoft, when they create some new services, they mostly start with creating Terraform modules. It's not really ready in Bicep yet. Is that something that you have some insights on why that is?
I have to admit that my experience is that it's the other way around, because if new resources are created or new services are created within Azure, it's like it has 0-day support within ARM, the Azure Resource Manager, the engine within Azure, or that creates all your resources within Azure, because I think Microsoft has, for all its engineers, has stated that they need to have the API in place first and then have it available within the portal, for instance, because the portal also relies on the APIs, so direct commands basically to the Azure Resource Manager. And because Bicep is instantly linked to the Azure Resource Manager, it has 0-day support for any new features or resources that are going to be available within Azure. Where for Terraform, they don't always have 0-day support, because with Terraform you have to create that intelligence, because it's a separate service and not part of that original statement by Microsoft that it has to be API first. So it's not like Terraform first. So usually it same with like SDKs, like PowerShell SDKs. It needs, the engineers need to provide extra effort to create that Terraform support.
Right. Well, that's enough questions from me. I put in some. There was a Flux Monster.
Yeah, I saw that.
Card.
Awesome.
Yeah, we have it in
great.
Iceland, so we can buy it. I'm a kind of a nerd too. I like collecting card games and such, so it's we really like this within my family to play. So
That's great to hear. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think there's no more questions, so I just say thank you very much for this lecture. It was fantastic, with really exciting things happening, especially with the snapshots, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, great.
Yep. All right. Until next time.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Looking forward to it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye-bye.